Right, so we're back with the Bryan Danielson AEW run, and we're today on match number 36, which is his third match with Daniel Garcia following the loss he faced last time, the last match we covered the Bryans. And this one is on AEW House of the Dragon Dynamite episode in 2022, which is pretty nuts. And it is a best out of three falls, so best 2 out of 3 falls match between him and Garcia. Now, Garcia at this point's going, still going by the Dragon Slayer, really rubbing it in. And obviously Jericho's on commentary because, Danny Garcia is still part of the JAS, the Jericho Appreciation Society. And then also, on top of that, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat is there. Now, I'm unsure if he's just there because it was the dragon sort of deal. But, he's like a timekeeper or some shit. I don't know. I like Steamboat. I'm just happy he's there. The match itself, I mean, it's what you expect between the two of them. It feels, it's a very technical match. And obviously the last match, the whole story was Bryan rushed back too early and now he's back, This match is a lot different. I will say the number one aspect I love about it, especially for the first half, is Garcia wrestles with no fear of Bryan. And I think that's how they were able to convey that was so fucking good. I mean, I really like that in the sense of you've got it to somehow convey that. And again, it's against Bryan, so it's like to convey that against someone like Bryan, which seems stupid. But they managed to make it work, obviously with the context of Bryan losing to Garcia. And Garcia's, he's not being cocky in that sense, but he's just got no fear. He knows it's a challenge, but he's still, doesn't have that trepidation. He's not stuttering. He's going for it. He's wrestling with that belief, and that's what I really like. And I think Garcia is obviously great. I'm a big Garcia fan. I say this every match he has. I am a big Garcia fan. I think this is one of his, if not his best match in AEW. I think that's really it's a bit different for Garcia. I'll explain a bit more. Bryan specifically, Bryan looks good. Bryan's got that. There's a certain point in the match where Bryan obviously comes alive, and that's the main thing. But in terms of the opener, it's not that he doesn't look in control. He just, it's very even. It's very back and forth, the first fall specifically. It's very back and forth. I do like how a lot of it, I do like it from a biased perspective of Bryan. But I also think, part of me is I don't know if that works or not, specifically. So a lot of it's Garcia slapping, getting these strikes, and obviously a lot of holds and technical mastery on Bryan. But then Bryan will just take one smack or one hit and it'll instantly stumble Garcia. And I like that difference of strength and experience, but I just feel like it happens a lot throughout the match as well. It really does. And I think that's something that should be noted, is a lot of it is Garcia will get a run, Bryan will strike him once, and then it's kind of flipped straight away. And I like that in theory. I just feel like maybe it happened a bit too much. It felt very predictable. But there's a lot of reversals by Bryan specifically, technically, as you expect. And that's what I really enjoy. You can tell, the comparisons here, obviously, is to, this is Bryan's equivalent to what Moxley had with that Utah match. And obviously, Bryan was very, very vocal about bringing Garcia to the BCC at this point. Now, what I like about it is it doesn't feel like a brutal match. It doesn't feel like that match with Utah where, it's desperation to join. It's just two great technical wrestlers just having this incredible chemistry and just having that, it feels like a lot of time because, obviously we've watched a lot of Bryan Danielson here. And Bryan will, because he's so technically sound and so technically just incredible, there's very few wrestlers he can go toe-to-toe technically with and kind of hang with. And obviously Sabre Jr. is the big one. But, I feel like a lot of times Bryan will have to not dumb his style down, but, not be able to do as much as he wants technically. And I do like with Garcia, I'm not saying Garcia is the same level, but Garcia is a fucking damn good wrestler, and I don't think he gets the credit for that. And I feel like he really holds his own. He really stands out. This match, honestly, probably makes Garcia... This and the last match, obviously, make Garcia look like a fucking $1,000,000. It's incredible. I really like Garcia here. He has that still bit of cockiness, but he's not, arrogant in that sense. He's still very, it's the technical ability that gets Garcia over, which is a big ask in modern-day wrestling, and he achieves that greatly. The first fall is surprisingly won by Garcia, which shocked me. He gets a pile driver on Bryan, and then Bryan gets it, and then he does the hold. And essentially, when that happens, he puts Bryan to sleep again, similar to the match. And I didn't think that would happen. And I was very surprised that it did. I thought it was very interesting that they did that. It was like, at that point, they were going to kind of go, okay, we're going to repeat the match again. And there's a lot of repetition between the two matches. Like, you know, watching these back-to-back doesn't help. But it also does highlight how good this Bryan and Garcia's chemistry is. So Bryan gets put to sleep, essentially, from that hold again. And then he also initiates the count out. Now, after this point, he gets back in, he saves the count, and then Garcia's kind of all over him, putting his foot on him, smacking him in the face. And this is where, like, a lot of it, like, because Garcia goes out after the second fall, he pulls the pavement up and then does another DDT on there, which was brutal again. And then Garcia's waiting for the count out. Jericho screaming, get the count out, and a win's a win! And Bryan's bleeding again. And after that point, that kind of wakes him up, but obviously, I'll talk about the proper thing that really rejuvenates Bryan. Where Bryan, like, pulls his hair up, and he's like, come on, show me. He's telling him to chop him, and he's just going, more. And, like, they eventually get into, you know, a bit of a whole technical marvel, you know, where they just try and roll. And, like, I don't even know if it was a bridge or what. It was so weird. Like, Garcia basically has this moment where he gets Bryan in the hold, and then Bryan reverses it into a simple reversal and gets the second pin, which is like, oh, fuck, that's a big fucking get. You know, obviously really changes the match, and it was like, oh, fuck. You know, and like at that point, Garcia's stunned. Bryan's kind of out of it because he's still, like, you know, recovering, because he's still split open, he's still bleeding, you know, he's still affected by that first, you know, pile driver. So Garcia goes up to Bryan, and this is where Bryan really gets riled up. He goes to him, he grabs him out of the face, he goes, look at me when I'm wrestling you, all that shit. And Bryan just looks at him, puts his hair back, and he goes, make me, motherfucker! Oh my god, that's the shit I kill for, Bryan. I think that's when Bryan's at his best, when he has this resilience, essentially. It's so good. He then stands there, and he does this, like, you know, he tells Garcia to chop him. Garcia's chopping him, and he's barely selling it, and then he eventually, like, goes up and comes back up and starts meditating. Garcia does it again and keeps going up and by meditating. Garcia gets up and kicks him. He does the same meditating, which is like, holy fuck, this is really cool. And then Garcia goes to do, I think he goes to do a run and drop kick, essentially. And Bryan gets up and does the elbow, obviously really gets that, you know, the knockdown straight away on Bryan, which is really, you know, which is something that had, you know, Bryan gets that knockdown on Garcia, more of it, and obviously that's something that had been happening throughout the match. And then it kind of becomes a lot more even, like there's, you know, a lot of it. Bryan's chest from the chops, by the way, from Garcia, like there's one specific chop that's really fucking good. And after this point, it's a lot of striking, it's a lot of kicks, it's a lot of elbows. Like, the audience really want Bryan to win. It's not as clear cut. There obviously is some back and forth. He goes to the post, and this is what I really like. He goes to the, you know, the post on the outside of the ring, which is very, you know, Bryan, obviously an iconic spot from him and McGuinness. And he gets him and he rags Garcia to him, but he's not going for the head, which you expect. He's going for the shoulder to limit Garcia's hold, which I thought was such an intelligent, such a small detail that I really appreciated. I thought that was really cool. He continues to do that. Garcia ends up reversing it, and he gets back, and then, like, you know, it's kind of died down again, and then they go to more the mat-based wrestling, you know, that just pure, like, you know, good shit that I like. Bryan eventually gets, I think Garcia goes for a Juji Gatame, which is pretty cool. And then, obviously, Bryan somehow reverses that. Bryan reverses it in one. Oh, Garcia gets a pinfall, and then he does the whole, you know, the up spot where he's got the hands up, and then do that whole spot. That was really cool. Garcia hits up a psycho knee on Bryan. That was really cool. And then he also kicks Bryan's head in, which was really cool, because I really enjoyed that, like, shit like that, where, like, they really put it over. Garcia can really imitate wrestlers really well, and I really like that. I just think that's a really cool little factor for him. Bryan ends up getting Garcia in a triangle and starts elbowing the fuck out of him. And then he eventually goes for I think it's just a regular armbar. No, it wasn't. He eventually goes for the label lock. When he's got the label lock on, it's like, and Garcia's trying to reach the rope, and he's not that far away from the rope. But then, obviously, you know, he continues, and then he eventually gets him in I forget what the hold was, but he puts Garcia to sleep. And that was the third fall, and that's how Bryan obviously gets the win, which is, you know, big fucking deal. You know, it's a big, good match. It's a really good match, really well paced, I will say as well. I don't think it gets the credit for the pace it has. I think it's a great pace. And obviously the striking's really good, but it's no one's going to deny it. It's a very technical match, and it really shows the technical ability of Danny Garcia, which I still don't think he gets the credit for, but I think he's really fucking good here. After the match, I thought was really interesting. After the match, Bryan's like really going up. Like Garcia's like trying to hold on to him, like to try and continue the match, and he's not. And Bryan just looks at him and he starts clapping him, and then he starts getting the crowd over, cheering and pointing at Garcia, and he's going, "Join me! Leave the group! Join me!" And he puts his hand out. And Garcia goes to shake his hand, and Jericho's on commentary, and then Jericho gets off commentary and attacks Bryan, and then Garcia rags Jericho off him. And then when he's doing that, like, Jericho's like, "You realize what you just did?" And then, like, Garcia's kind of, befuddled, doesn't know what to do. He doesn't join the Blackpool Combat Club, which I think the big thing for me looking back on it is how. Like, I've made it clear, I'm a big Garcia fan. I think Garcia is great, and I think, honestly, you look back on it, it's like, hell yeah. Like, I think it works better for Garcia. I think you look at the work now, especially with Death Riders, it's incredible. But I feel like in this match, you just watch it and you're like, how did that not happen? But I like how Bryan presents him and he gets him over. And he eventually, obviously leaves, and then that's the end of the whole thing. I think as a match, bell to bell, I think it technically is sound as all hell. I do. I think it's really good. I think the reversal specifically, like Garcia does this one where he has Bryan basically in a chokehold, and then Bryan somehow reverses it, but like he doesn't move his arm, like he doesn't let go of the wrist control or whatever it was, and then I think he's got the hold like that, and then but his arm goes like underneath, and Garcia doesn't even look in pain. He just does it such a smooth transition. Oh, bro, it's just how he moves it's something that I don't think Garcia is ever going to be presented in the right light for that. I feel like, again, his PWG run, I've not really watched, but even I could tell, like, just from watching this, that benefits him greatly. Obviously, the Pure title, stuff like that, him and Lee Moriarty, stuff, that's the scene where I think Garcia will always get that credit. And I feel like, not that he's bad, obviously not, I love Garcia, but I feel like, he doesn't really benefit from being a sports entertainer. Obviously, after it, because the Jericho Appreciation Society was all thing was, "We're sports entertainers." The entire crowd screaming, "You're a wrestler." It's like, oh yeah, that's fucking peak. And then obviously the whole stuff with Jericho happens. I do really like how Garcia is presented as the young pup here, like, as a rookie it clearly highlights his potential. And obviously with Bryan, shock. But Jesus, it's really well worked. And I think it's genuinely really well worked. I think how it presents Garcia, how it presents Bryan, how it presents the match itself, the teetering of, like, to have a technical match with Bryan Danielson and your name's not Zack Sabre Jr. or Nigel McGuinness is like, how do we make this, kind of, sellable? And Garcia, don't get me wrong, it's not the same level, but Jesus, it's very much, he hangs very highly in a high level too. But again, bear in mind, my greatest of all time. Especially fucking technical wrestlers, Jesus. And, like, it just shows that Garcia's level is very fucking high, even at this age. And, Jesus, you watch this now and you're like, he has developed and just improved so fucking much. And that's what I really enjoyed from it. I always like going back to watch wrestlers. I don't think they played into the whole, the Game of Thrones stuff as much as they could. They definitely could, but, they didn't. But either way, as a match, I thought it was a very fitting way to end Garcia and Bryan's whole thing that they had going on. But I also think it leaves Garcia in a very good position going from it. Obviously, we know how that turned out. But Jesus, it's a really solid match. Really, I cannot, like, I don't want to oversell it, but I don't want to undersell it. This is a really fucking solid. It's a very, if you're a fan of technical wrestling, which again, Bryan Danielson, I'd be surprised if you're not. It's very fucking good. It's one of Bryan's better modern matches. Obviously, in his AEW run, it's one of the better ones. I thought Steamboat would have a bit more of an involvement. Like, I forget what match it was where Bryan had the timekeep. I think it was the Hangman match. I just remembered. It was the Hangman match, where Mark Henry and the like were on the judges. And I feel like that was something that they could have done, but they don't. They just kind of have Steamboat there. He just kind of exists. But either way, as a match, bell to bell, Bryan obviously gets the win. It really helps him with the BCC. There's no appearance from Regal still, which is a bit of a shock, obviously, the whole stuff. And then Moxley was early on in the night. He doesn't stick around. But I think as a match, technical wrestling aside, technical wrestling specifically, it's a fucking high level. And I don't think it's on YouTube. I don't think this is the one that's Garcia and Bryan on YouTube. Jesus, if you're a fan of technical wrestling, you haven't watched this, I don't know how. You owe it to yourself. It is a modern great. It's a true modern great. So yeah, that's my thoughts on Bryan Danielson versus Daniel Garcia. Best 2 out of 3 falls in AEW House of the Dragon Dynamite in 2022. Let me know what you thought of this match. Obviously, let me know what you think of Bryan and specifically Garcia at this point. Where do you think Garcia ranks in technical wrestlers in the world? Because I think that's a very interesting question, because I think he's pretty fucking high. Really good technical wrestler.